Hey everybody, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. I am Matt Connerton, and to my right is Jane Cormier, who is doing double duty this
Yes.
week. You're not only in for Gary, but you're the guest. You're a host and a guest.
Here we go. Double
So
duty.
welcome. Our original guest fell through,
Yes.
and he will regret it someday. He will rue this day.
Wow, I think that's the first time I've heard you say anything that was,
I firmly believe that that he will regret it.
Oh, my. You're meaner than I am. Wowie zowie.
I can be.
Okay.
But no, this is cool because we were talking off air, and we'll probably talk about a lot of stuff. But I'm really curious to ask you about your opera career.
You are.
I am.
Okay.
Now, full disclosure, I don't know a lot about opera. Actually, very little. I'm a musician.
Yeah.
I've had some vocal training. I've actually been to 3 different vocal teachers over the
Really?
years, and yeah. I still can't sing particularly well. I'm a good harmony singer.
Yeah.
I can find the octave and harmonize with people, but
Fabulous.
on my own I get lost.
Okay.
Still, even now. So,
Interesting.
yeah. So I admire people who can sing well, and obviously for opera, you
Yeah.
sing better than well.
Yes. Well, hopefully.
Yeah. No, and I've checked out a couple of the YouTube videos that are up there. We'll start with this. At what age did you get in?
I was
singing opera?
very, very late. I
Really?
was,
Yeah?
yeah, sure. I was the last of 8 kids, and I was going to be the next, Barbara Streisand.
Yeah.
And so I did all my high school, my junior high and my high school singing, and I did all the plays, and I took 14 years of dance. I was a really good tap dancer.
Yeah.
And show music was what I was going to go out and show the world, right?
Yeah.
And went to Austria when I went to college. My bachelor's degree was in the creative arts
Yeah.
with a concentration in psychology and aesthetics, believe it or
Okay.
not. It was a great degree. And while I was there, I was just going for performance. We sort of discovered that there was some singing ability there. My voice teacher brought out a classical book, and we sort of went and found out what my range was, and it turned
Sure.
out that my range was very naturally almost 3 octaves, which is kind of rare.
Yeah,
So-
that is.
Yeah. So we went from there. I was accepted in a place. The beginning seed of finding out about opera was in Graz, Austria. I was with a group called the American Institute of Musical Studies. I got accepted to go there for a summer, and I was in their musical theater program. So while I was singing for some of those classes, it was a very competitive, very master class oriented, I think it was 6 weeks long.
Yeah.
And while I was in that class, the assistant conductor of the Metropolitan Opera approached me. Very famous woman. And those that are opera aficionados will probably know her name. Her name was Joan Dorneman. And she said to me, dear, you could be a fabulous opera singer. And of course, last of 8 kids, I had never seen an opera in my life. I'm thinking to myself,
No kidding.
yeah, right. I'm not wearing those horns. I'm not going to sing opera.
Right.
But you know what? She asked me to come into her studio because this institute not only had a musical theater program, it had an operatic program.
Yeah.
And she said, come in and sing. Just you and I. So I did. And when I got into that studio, I was there for about 40 minutes, and it changed my life totally.
kidding.
Totally. Because at that point, I decided this is what I want to do. And I changed my studies in college, my undergrad degree, and I did some graduate work as well.
Yeah.
And became what really the big thing for an opera singer isn't just singing. People think, you're born with a voice. Absolutely, you need to have an instrument. But from what my experience is people with solid instruments weren't always the ones that had the big careers. It was the
Sure.
ones that learned the languages, that could speak four foreign languages, that could act in front of an audience, especially today, in a realistic way.
Yeah.
Opera today is very different from what opera was even 20 years ago.
Really?
Because of the advent of video.
Oh, okay.
So the preparation for singing for singing in opera is multi-layered, tremendously multi-layered. And I found that fascinating. To me, it was like, juggling 7 balls in the air at once to be able to do that at the level I wanted to be,
Right.
proficient.
Right.
So I inevitably, after working with Joan Dorneman, within a few months, she said I had just finished graduated from BA. I got my BA in creative arts, and she said, "You come out and live in New York, and if you live in New York, I will take you on as a student, and we will train you." So I did. I lived on 57th Street with a roommate, and I was there 4 days a week, 3 days a week working two jobs here in New Hampshire.
Wow.
And did that commute.
Wow.
And I tell you, I learned in a year and 2 years what I think most conservatory students could take 4 to 6 learning. That's how concentrated my education was. I'd run to Juilliard for my voice lesson, and then I would go to my drama was with a woman named Janet Bookspan, whose husband was very famous. You probably heard him. He used to be the public service announcer for all of the opera programs.
Oh, really?
Martin Bookspan, yeah. Very educated, wonderful speaker, beautiful voice. But his wife was a very famous stage director. So I just lucked out. I got some of the most famous people in opera at that time that were behind me.
Yeah.
And within 3 years, I was off in Europe and auditioning.
Do you ever reflect back on that? It sounds like that fateful meeting with Joan Dorneman.
Joan Dorneman,
Joan Dorneman. Mm-hmm. Like that was really. If that hadn't happened,
I wouldn't be singing opera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is amazing to think about it in this context too. Is that it's almost like kind of falling into something,
sure.
And then it turns out that you're really good at it and have a passion for it. But when you hear people talk about, I just fell into this, I do this, I kind of fell into it. Opera isn't usually one of those things that people just fall into, but you really kind of did. It's interesting.
It very, what do you talk about? Serendipity or fate or whatever that might be. Musical theater as an art form is similar to opera. It's just that in opera you have to have a little bit bigger skill set.
Sure.
But, you have to be able to think and act in the languages in which you are singing.
Yeah.
And the degree to which the audience will enjoy the performance is on the level of the singer on the stage.
And we have a call. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
Tom.
Hi, Tom. Welcome. What you got?
I have a question. I know you told Norm, a while back, to help out, not smoke anymore. But what about, do you help out, people that want to lose weight?
Oh, absolutely, yes. Yep, I do. Hypnotherapy can be used for a lot of different things. Helping people to quit smoking is the biggest thing that I use it for, that clients come to me for. But yeah, we can use it for weight loss as well, absolutely.
Okay, do I have to eat with you or something? What do I have to do? Just heal.
Yeah, we can, if you want to give me a call, you can call my office line. Let me give you the number.
Okay, let me get a pen and paper. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'll call you back about 2 minutes. I got to get a pen and paper.
Okay, call us back.
There it is.
I don't know if you knew that about me, Jane.
I did not.
I'm a hypnotherapist. I help people to quit smoking.
Okay, well, see, that's why you're so good on TV.
Yeah, maybe part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can speak in a soothing tone.
Absolutely.
Helps people relax.
Yeah. Well, you do, and I'm not surprised when you said you had vocal training, because I think when I first met you, I had mentioned to you your voice was very, very nice. It has a sonority to it that's very, very different.
It's funny. It's never even occurred to me before that my vocal training might have something to do with that.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But
Absolutely.
I wish I had my father has a great voice. I think I have a good voice for this. My dad has a great voice.
Oh yeah.
I keep hoping that as I get older, my voice gets deeper like his. I think the shape of my nose kind of screwed me up a little bit. I wish I was just a little bit less nasal.
No, you know what? It's not. It's the size of the vocal cord that determines.
Really? Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
So yeah, your voice, if your dad's voice, like my husband is a basso profondo, what we call in opera, the lowest bass voice you can have. I mean, this guy just tanks through the floor, right?
Really?
And that changed at about 14. Just poof, and that's it. But it has to do with the size of the vocal cord. If the vocal cord is thick, wide, the voice will be low.
Okay.
If the vocal cord is thin and short, that gives us very high sopranos, for instance. Yeah, vocal cords for sopranos are thinner. Now, if you're a Wagnerian soprano who's singing that big, heavy stuff, your vocal cords will be wider than the thin, lighter-voiced soprano that's singing. So
okay, that makes sense.
It's not your It's not anything in the
It's not my
sinus or your nose.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I won't get that nose
There you
job I was
go.
thinking about that.
No, I think it's fine.
So, how many languages did you have to learn to do this?
I had to really feel comfortable in the German because I lived in a German country for a while. German and Italian I was really fairly strong with, and it's quite amazing how quickly they go when you don't use them. I mean, when I go back to reading, I can read really well. But I went to Sicily a couple of years ago, and I tell you, I felt like, because I had not studied it before I went back, and it was like another world. I couldn't understand anything. And of course, the facile movement of the language when you're living there is something that just happens almost naturally. You know, you're living with people and interacting, so it's good. But when you leave it and go back, mamma mia, I was thinking German while I was trying to speak to somebody in Italian. Yeah, see, so that's not usage. But if you're an opera singer, you're using these languages. And you have to be pretty, you have to be able to understand them, to be able to phonate the proper context.
Sure.
Because I used to always think the great opera singer, the important thing for good opera, because unfortunately there has been pretty bad opera out there, which has given people a bad idea of what opera is supposed to be. But at its apex, even if people do not understand a single word you're saying, if the singer understands what they're saying, and if the singer knows what the other person's saying, right? That reaction is visceral, and that will translate itself to the audience.
That's what I hear people say. People who are really heavily into opera. I always hear people say that. Yeah.
Now, if you go to the opera today, any opera company that's a B company up, meaning B level, you'll find that they have surtitles or subtitles underneath that run concurrently with what's being said.
Oh, really?
The thing is I really don't like them because a lot of the time they are poetic translations. They're not exactly what's being said. And when Puccini and Verdi wrote their pieces, their great Italian pieces, they used certain words for a reason.
Sure.
And when we transpose it, or when we not transpose it, but when we transcribe it into another language, it's different. When you're poetically translating rather than absolute word-to-word translation. So it's different.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
You mentioned too that it's changed a lot over
yes,
the
it
past
has.
couple of decades.
I'm not sure that it's all changed for the best. And right now, it's funny you're asking me about opera because now that the political world, my race has been decided, and while I still intend to stay pretty active on the commentary side and active in the State House, speaking in committee, I'm going back to the roots that I had before, and we have an opera company in Concord that will be revving up at the end of the month called Piccolo Opera, which is little opera. And the reason I did it was because of what we were just discussing, the fact that it has changed so much. Opera has basically been losing companies in this country right and left. And we've lost some huge young artist programs.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. And being someone that benefited from those programs and working with young singers today that need those programs, you cannot learn to be an opera singer in the studio.
Right.
You can't do it. You've got to be on stage. You've got to be able to handle your adrenaline rush. You've got to be able to handle what happens if somebody misses a cue, and you've got to get back online with that orchestra and the conductor.
Sure.
Those things have to be done live. You can't practice them in a studio.
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, when I started to look, I had a couple of students that were in New York, and they sent me some numbers, which I've been immersed in politics for 3 years. So the opera's been, taking a sideway here. But when they sent me these things, and I saw the number of companies that we've lost and in this country and the number of our young artist programs, I thought, my God, there's no future.
Wow.
If we do not start feeding these kids that are coming out of conservatory with degrees, with a venue through which to practice what they've learned, we're not going to help it. It will be gone. By the next generation, we will have such a niche, opera will become such a niche, business that I'm unwilling to go there. So I figured, what can I do? And the one thing I can do is offer through Piccolo Opera in Concord the opportunity for youngsters to come in, emerging singers, and give them a venue, a platform, some training, and support.
Yeah.
And offer our audience a good product doing so.
Right.
Because I'm a really good opera director.
Are you?
Yeah, having done it,
Yeah.
having been in the big opera house and had that career that got me to a pretty high level of performing. I can share that, and I can offer that, and I can support those singers. So while it's an emerging company for youngsters to come on in and practice, the wonderful benefit is that the audience gets to see this new talent and grow with it, and we can learn together. It's a
Right.
wonderful, wonderful opportunity.
So when you were going through your training, I mean, that sounds pretty rigorous,
it was.
especially with the going back and forth. I mean, how did you keep going? How did you stay motivated and focused?
I was just tremendously motivated.
Yeah.
And I didn't have, it was really hard. I had to be so single-minded because I did not have an establishment, a school program set for me.
Right.
I had to do it myself. I had to find a way to pay the $125 per voice lesson.
Yeah.
3 lessons a week. For between that and your diction lesson. Now, your diction had to be refined. I had the best diction coach, I think, in the history of the Metropolitan Opera, a man named Nico Castel. And he was the international diction coach at the Met for probably 35, 40 years. Long time.
Yeah.
Recently retired, but absolutely magnificent. Just a magnificent character. I think he spoke 18 languages. Wow. He is a genius.
Yeah.
And seasoned in operatic. So when I would go to New York, I'd always see Nico. I'd be backstage at the Met with my coach, Joan Dorneman. I saw opera 3-4 nights a week live, which is really important. So I had I made it up as I went along.
Sure.
But I had to stay very focused because there was nobody that was going to help me.
Yeah.
I had to get it done myself.
Did you always have a lot of discipline, or
Yeah.
was that okay?
I always did. Even when
Really?
I was a youngster. I mean, I sang in public when I was about 7 years old in Boston. My first big gig was on the radio. I sang some, they were like religious songs
Sure.
at the Tremont Temple Church in Boston.
Yeah.
And I learned there at 7
Wow.
that this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
That this was something not everybody could do. And, so the discipline, I was never interested in getting up before anybody. I'm still not, even when I speak politically.
Yeah.
And winging it.
Yeah.
I have to be steeped in what it is I'm speaking about or communicating to the point that it free flows.
Sure.
That's the discipline.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. Do you get nervous at all before you go on stage?
Not
or-
anymore. Well, you know what? I tell everybody, too, because right now we're in a really difficult period with young singers. Beta blockers are really big and have been for about 20, 25 years in the performing arts. Beta blockers basically are a drug that instrumentalists will take and singers will take to lower the rate of the heart while they perform. And because, let's face it, one mistake can mean the career for you if you're at a high level.
I had no idea.
Oh, let me tell you,
Interesting.
I learned I not only was against that because I just don't believe in taking anything like that.
Yeah.
But I train my singers to use the adrenaline. You don't want it. The adrenaline is the life of you on stage.
Right.
Can you imagine Maria Callas not being Maria Callas because she took a pill that deadened it?
Right.
You know, a
right.
Pavarotti that wasn't as great as he was on stage. Everybody says, oh, he was just big and fat. No. You know what? They didn't see him live. I saw him perform live on stage at least 20 times.
Oh, really? Wow.
And let me
Yeah.
tell you, every time he moved me. Fabulous. You don't want to deaden that. So I train my singers, get used to the nerves,
Yeah.
work with them, because they make you better. They give you something when you perform that the other guy doesn't have.
Right.
And I used to be able to tell, why the one gig that probably everybody knows is Phantom of the Opera, right? Weber's Phantom of the
sure,
Opera.
yeah.
So I was singing Carlotta over in Vienna. Das Phantom der Oper was what they call it. And I played Carlotta over there for a year and a half or so. And I used to be able to tell on stage. Because, when you're performing 6 nights on the stage, you learn really quick. But I would be able to look at somebody and tell who was doing the stuff and who wasn't.
No kidding. Really?
Their eyes were just like gone.
Oh, really?
They
Yeah.
weren't there.
Yeah.
Now, they didn't make mistakes
Yeah.
because the beta blockers or other anxiety drugs, they don't tend to make you like, woohoo, crazy or anything.
Sure.
They just sort of lower the adrenaline rush.
Oh, wow. Interesting. We
Yeah.
have another call. This might be my
Yes.
client calling back. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, and Grenades. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Steve.
Steve? Hi, Steve.
This is Steve. How you doing?
Good. Welcome.
I'd like to ask your guest, who does she think was the greatest between Caruso and Pavarotti?
Well, you know what? I have not heard Caruso live, of course. I think that, in my mind, the greatest vocal sound of any Italian tenor has got to go to Luciano Pavarotti. And I think that Caruso was important not just because he was a great voice, but because he was a great, larger-than-life actor on stage. Caruso's participation in opera was more than just singing. He was a character. And that's why he brought opera forward. In his place, I think, was historical in that regard. Pavarotti had a presence and a voice that was 1 in a million vocal cords. No one will ever touch it.
Now, I heard someone told me the opposite. They said that Caruso actually had a stronger voice that could actually carry farther than Pavarotti. Is that true?
I think that Caruso had a deeper voice, okay? That means that on the treble end of Caruso's voice, he had a fuller sound in there. Okay. Now here's where it's important to understand what's happened to opera in these years between Caruso, who's early 1900s, right, and then we have the mid 70s to the 90s or 60s to 90s for Pavarotti. The sound of Pavarotti's voice was so concentrated, the treble sound in his voice, that it traveled further than just about any voice you could imagine. You could hear him at the Met, 4,000 seats, with no problem. So actually, singers' voice traveling is on the vibration of the tone. And I suspect that if they looked at the vibration of the tone of Caruso, of course we only have recordings to do that, they would find a fatter vibration because he had a fuller sound.
Now that's what I heard. I heard that Caruso, somebody in the opera itself, in the theater, could actually hear Caruso nice and clear, way in the back up on the balcony. They could actually hear his voice, that it came across like they were right in front of him. Now, didn't he use mic?
No, that is not true. You know what? I was at the Met when I was studying. I saw probably all of the last performances of Joan Sutherland when she was retiring that year. And I saw, because of that, he did a lot of work that year at the Met. And he really liked Joan. They were close. I heard him live so many times, and I can tell you that's a lot of hooey. Now, when he did the three tenors, of course, because these were venues where 10,000 people or more were sitting there listening in open venues, right? Yeah. He did use mics on those. But on stage, Luciano never needed a mic. His voice sailed. Although, you got to remember now, the houses, the Metropolitan Opera House that Caruso sang in was a smaller house, and it was built for the opera singer. The Metropolitan Opera that Luciano sang in was a different opera house, 4,000 seats. So very different animals there.
Right. That's fantastic. Could I ask you a favor?
Sure.
Could you sing a few notes for me? I'm going to hang up. Could you do a couple of notes?
Oh, my.
All right, Steve, thanks for the call. Thank you.
How about I do this instead?
Nothing like being put on the spot.
I know, that's okay. You know what? I actually get that a lot. But we're talking about piccolo opera, and I would rather sing in a venue where I can actually show
Sure, of course.
a much better spot of myself.
Right.
So for anybody that's interested, I will be performing on the 31st of October. Oh. We're doing a Halloween opera ball at the Concord City Auditorium.
Wow.
7:30, and we're going to have some of my young singers perform on stage. We're going to do just the hits, the things that people might have heard in a commercial.
Sure.
Or,
yeah.
the famous stuff. And I'm going to sing some really beautiful stuff on that program. So I invite you to come and see us live, where you can hear the real deal rather than me trying to, croak a few notes here over this over this microphone.
There you go. Well handled.
No, thank you.
Let me ask you, because either Steve mentioned or you mentioned the three tenors.
Yes.
Was that the point where, in terms of pop culture,
yes.
where opera most sort of transcended.
Thank goodness it did. Yes, absolutely. That was the point where, in my mind anyway, I don't know if anybody's written about it, historically speaking in this country, you got to remember now, in Europe, opera is on the same level as pop.
Sure.
Right? That it was formed in Europe.
Yeah.
It came here when we became a nation rather late in the process. But they've been doing opera since the 1600s, right?
Yeah.
So it very much was a popular art form in Europe. However, the three tenor concerts brought that to America
Okay.
by offering a venue that people that were not operatically disposed said, hey,
Right.
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. We have another call. Hi. Welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Who's this?
Yeah, hi, this is Tom again.
Hi, Tom.
I'm ready for that phone number.
Okay. The number is 603
603.
344.
Can you repeat that, please?
Okay. 603 344
344.
6491.
Got it. I'll give you a call.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Tom.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
you do. Doing
Bye-bye.
business. I love it.
Yeah. It never stops. I only sleep 4 hours a night because I'm always doing
Oh,
business.
my goodness.
But yeah, I remember the three tenors, and that was, and of course Pavarotti. Everybody, you don't have to know a thing about opera to have heard of him.
That's right.
Is he kind of the biggest star in terms of mainstream popularity in the
Yes.
history of opera?
I would think so.
Yeah.
I would think so because he was just so larger than life in every way, and he could engage even the rock, the rock genre.
Oh, that's right. He
You
did
know?
those. He did that. I forgot about that. He did that series of CDs with rock
What's
and
his
pop
name?
musicians.
Yes,
yeah.
he had quite a few.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, and we have another call. Well, it was a busy night. Hi, welcome to Rock Paper Hand Grenades. Who's on the line?
This is Steve. I went off the line a little quick here. I forgot to ask her a trivia question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, Carly Simon, here's the trivia question.
Yeah.
Carly Simon has a sister that was a famous opera singer.
Yes.
You know who she is?
I do not. I thought it was her mother. No?
No, this was a sister of hers.
Okay. No, I don't know.
Beverly Sills.
No, that's not true.
Yeah,
That it isn't true.
that's her sister.
It isn't true. I don't think that's true. You know what? I'm not 100%
Beverly Sills,
sure.
I'm telling you, Beverly Sills is her sister, her older sister.
Okay, well, I'll
Look it
look it
up.
up. I will. I'll look that up because you know what? I never heard that before. But hey,
Yeah,
I'll look it up.
That's her older sister. She married a guy named Sills.
Huh.
But her really name is Beverly Simon.
Get out of here!
Yeah, really.
Oh,
Her
my
name is
goodness.
Beverly Simon.
Wowie
She was
zowie.
very famous for the game Simon Says.
Well, I find that Carly Simon never. I don't recall her ever discussing that.
No.
I mean, Beverly Sills is probably
Yeah.
one of
Yeah,
the most
that's
famous
the
American
story.
sopranos ever.
You're gonna have you can look it up, but that's Beverly Sills,
Cool.
her sister.
All right.
All right, Steve. Well,
Thank you. I'll look it up.
Jane's gonna fact check that, and we'll address it next week.
Also, one last thing. I think the next time you sing, have you ever sang Man of La Mancha?
Yeah, I haven't sung it on in the role in the show, but I've sung the songs from it. Yes.
Because if you take a good look at Matt with the beard and everything, he'd be a good Man of La Mancha.
Yeah. Huh?
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, have a good one.
All right, Steve. Thank you.
Can
Bye-bye.
you sing "The Impossible Dream"?
I don't think I can. I know the song, but I can't sing it.
There you go.
Also, too, when Steve called before, is it so opera singers don't use microphones?
No.
Okay.
No. I mean, let's face it. We train rigorously to not ever have to use a mic.
Yeah.
And we don't want to use a mic because the mic changes how the ear will hear that voice.
Sure,
So
yeah.
if I'm working my voice to get the clearest, most beautiful sound that I can spin, I don't want that getting in the way.
Is that difficult to? Is it in the breathing, being able to project? Because obviously
It's all
you
in
have to really.
it's in
project.
the breathing and it's also in the placement. If the voice has a good breathing mechanism underneath it,
Yeah.
great. However, that's only some of it. If the voice is placed too far in the back, it's not going to matter what kind of gas it has in the tank.
Okay.
It's only going to go so far.
Yeah.
Remember, it's all about that vibration.
Yeah.
So if you place your voice in a very high spot, right? Usually it's in the mask. for most singers.
Okay.
And find that spot to where you know it is throughout the register. That spot cannot move. That's the trick with study. You have to learn how to, that spot never moves. All the notes go through that spot, and therefore you have a beautiful, full, even sound.
Yeah.
That's what we train. I teach what we call the bel canto technique, which really has very few people teaching anymore. It's from the 1800s. It's a technique where beautiful sound is bel canto, beautiful singing. And it basically says there should be no point of tension in the body when you sing to emit the most beautiful sound that you can.
Okay.
And so the whole technique is based on that. It's based on the placement of the instrument and then shoring that up with the breathing mechanism that free flows so that it never gets constricted. You never feel, you know.
Right, right.
So I believe that I'm a fine voice teacher only because I started at 18 when I didn't know anything. And then as I started to learn the operatic thing, I was able to go back and fill in all those holes.
Okay.
And you know, I've thousands of singers I've worked with in 30 years.
Is there ever a circumstance where an opera singer uses a mic, or is that an absolute strict no-no?
Yeah, I'm sure that there are some that cheat, but they won't tell you.
Right.
They hide it. There's all kinds of like secret stuff where they say, the singers really are mic'd at the Met. But I've never seen it. And Dorneman, Joan Dorneman, who for all of the A casts, all of the best casts, Dorneman was the prompter in the box. Now, the prompter on a big stage is the person that sits on the high stool, and there's a little lip on the stage where her face and her hands are right there, so that the singers that are on stage, now mind you, you could have 100-piece in the orchestra pit.
Yeah.
You can't see the conductor because the conductor's in back of those players.
Okay.
So you need sometimes someone in that box, that prompter's box, to throw the cue to you.
Oh, okay.
Plus, if you get off, she can save the day, the prompter.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, thousands and thousands and thousands of productions, and she swore that she never saw a mic
kidding.
in.
Interesting. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Any idea how many live performances you've done?
Oh, my. Yeah. I don't know.
Hundreds, thousands?
Thousands.
Really? Yeah.
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 Yeah. I mean, I did one gig for Magic Flute where I had 18 shows within 3 or 4 weeks. Yeah, I sang the Queen of the Night, which is this very high, just like cut you off at the knees, difficult aria. And I had no cover. So we just hoped that for 18 productions in the 3 weeks that I was at that opera house, that all would go well.
Right.
And it did.
Right.
Knock on wood.
When you're in that zone of doing a series of shows like that, are there things that you have to do, specific things to kind of protect and take care of your voice?
Yes.
Okay.
This is why I left.
Really?
I left. I was offered a management in Vienna when I left, 90, I think. And I decided that at that point I had worked so hard. I was making a lot of money. I was, the new kid on the block, right? But you know what? The lifestyle was awful. My God, I mean, it was. I had no real support system, unfortunately, which probably made it worse, right? But when you sing, you don't go out afterward.
Right.
You can't go out with your friends. You can't go out and drink. You can't go out and, talk too much. You have to see an awful lot of movies.
Yeah.
If you're going to be singing like that, you cannot use your voice when you're not on.
Yeah.
So it's a very, very lonely life.
Yeah. I'm sure you certainly couldn't expose yourself to a smoky bar or something like that.
Of course not.
No.
No.
That would have been horrendous.
And let me tell you, in the opera world today, there are so many singers, are paranoid about getting sick. Don't come near me, and the scarves around the thing, and no, I don't shake hands. Very common. And I thought to myself, last of 8 kids, I'm used to people. Am I going to really sign on my life now? Am I going to sign on the line and give it all away? I could not live that lifestyle.
Yeah.
And that's when I decided I was going to come back to the States and find another way to contribute, because I was just dying inside.
Yeah.
I was not able to be with people at all.
Right.
So that was inevitably what made me change my mind about what I was doing.
Yeah, and it sounds like the schedule's pretty rigorous.
Yeah, it was. I loved the opera part. I hated that part. And I hated the part that with agents and with the directors, you were really a piece of meat. Mm-hmm. You were only as good as your next, as your last gig.
Sure.
And if you missed the high E or the high F, it was just not, it was tough, very tough. So you have to really want to do it.
What do you do if you get sick? If you're an opera singer, like say you just get a cold. I mean, are you able to kind of work around that? Or?
I tell my singers too. You'll only cancel once before you probably get dropped for the next contract. Okay. You just don't get sick to the point where you can't sing. And most of the time you can sing through just about anything.
Okay.
The great thing about proper technique is that it allows you even to sing through illness. The only thing you cannot sing through is, of course, if you're dehydrated. However that would work. And if you have full-blown laryngitis. You can even sing above pharyngitis. Pharyngitis being that the irritation is not on the vocal cord, but around the vocal cord area.
Okay.
You can place your voice high enough to actually sing with that. I've done that.
Really?
Yeah. Now, if you have full-blown laryngitis where you have fluid and mucus covering the vocal cords, that's what happens when you have laryngitis. You lose the ability to speak. You know how, like, when you lose your voice?
Oh, yeah.
That's because you've got a mucus covering down there. You shouldn't sing for that, because if you sing hard, okay, and you have laryngitis, you can burst the blood vessels in that area.
Oh, wow.
You can cause real bad edema, swelling down there if you do that. So laryngitis is a big fat no. Other than that, as long as you're not throwing up or dehydrated, you can pretty much sing through anything if you're trained.
Okay.
Yeah. Might not be the best, and let's face it, when you sing, the adage out in the real world of opera is if you sing 80 shows, you'll like one. It's true.
Wow.
You'll find all kinds of other things. Live opera is not what you hear on the recordings. Live opera, you have things, you have issues you got to get through, their challenges. That's why it's sporting. That's what's so fabulous about performing live on stage.
Sure.
Because it's a real course. It's an obstacle course. And it's great too. I try to teach my kids, these young singers that come in, that it's not just the singing and it's not just the acting. The third most important thing that separates the men from the boys is if you're on stage, can you gauge when you're losing your audience? And if you can gauge them, you can pull them back.
Yeah.
And that's a skill that takes a long time to get. You have to be able to be in front of audiences enough to get rid of your own things, to be able to zone in and say, okay, I'm losing them here, I'm going to pull them back in.
Yeah.
And it's very doable.
Yeah.
Yeah, very doable.
Can you, I mean, are there physical cues, or do you just kind of sense it, or?
You can sense it. I have very strong senses when I'm performing on stage. I sort of go into this different realm. Everything slows down and everything is just like very clear.
Because I would think there would be some instances where it's hard to see the audience, depending on
if
what
you're
the
at the
lighting
Met,
situation.
you're not. If you're in a big opera house, you're probably not going to see them. However, you could sometimes hear.
Okay.
Now, if they're fidgeting,
If you hear murmuring or something,
fidgeting or that, go over to that side and get over there and start doing your duty. But sometimes, if you're in a middle-sized house, you can see somewhat.
Yeah.
And, you can just tell. You can sort of feel when the audience is with you. When they're with you, you can just see them. They're on the edge. They're with you.
Yeah.
And you want that. That's what you're there for as a singer.
Is that the best part of the whole thing? It sounds like it must be. It sounds like that must be the most exhilarating part of the whole deal.
The whole thing for an opera singer, I suppose, the humble thing aside, when you're on all cylinders, and you're shooting something that's that difficult, not just getting it right, but putting it in the laps of the people that are watching it, and engaging them. What do you think about that? There's nothing. There's a power to that I think is just beyond.
Yeah, I think that's probably universal in any form of entertainment.
Yeah, I think so.
Whether you're an opera singer or I've played in a lot of rock bands, or if you're a stand-up comedian, or whatever it is that you do when you're on that stage, when you know that you've got them.
Yes.
You've got them with you, and they're I don't know how else to put it. You've got them.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
It's very interesting.
Let's we have a little bit of time left. Why don't we shift gears a little bit, because I want to know more about your foray into politics and when that started and how that came about.
Well, I was running a nonprofit, actually a little opera company, a Lakes Region Opera Company in Alton, where my family lived for many years, and was very active in that. And about 3.5 years, maybe 4 years ago, I started to really poke my head up and start paying attention to what was happening.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at how asleep I had been. I'm a fairly well-read human being, and I always read newspapers, and
Sure.
but I started to dig a little bit as to politically what was happening in my community, and it woke me up.
Was there any one particular thing that that made you go, what's this about?
I started to see that there was a real lack of ethics and lawlessness that was accepted
Yeah.
by not just the people, but by the people in the game.
Oh, yeah.
And that I had always assumed, isn't it? It's kind of Pollyanna, I lived my whole life like that,
Yeah.
that people make mistakes, but you know what? They're doing the best that they can.
Right.
Well, then I said, no, that's not true.
Right.
That really wasn't true.
Yeah.
And so we're in 2014. So 2011, I decided to jump into the race. I had been going to my delegation meetings in Belknap County. The delegation meetings on the county level, you don't just become a state rep and go on Wednesdays and vote. You're also responsible for your county, duties.
Okay.
And the county sets all kinds of priority, for the taxpayers in your community. So it's really important.
Yeah.
And I started going to those meetings and started to see what was happening in those meetings that was beyond the pale.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People couldn't spend taxpayers' money enough. Couldn't do it fast enough.
Right.
And I was kind of outraged by that. And the
Yeah.
attitude, and these were by people that were supposedly there for the little guy.
Right. And they don't want to be questioned, obviously.
Holy moly. So I decided to run, and we had no experience. I mean, you're talking about an opera singer, right?
Right.
And we kicked some serious butt.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the incumbent that had been in there for a while, and he was gone. And then I figured, you know what? Here was a platform for someone that had no real connection to politics. I knew no one. Who was I going to say I was aligned with?
Sure.
To just sort of get information out to the people. And I signed up with the Weirs Times to become a weekly contributor to their paper.
Yeah.
And so when I would write, just like when I sing or when I would do anything, I have to be immersed in it. I have
Right.
to know the guts of it.
Right.
And that made me really try to do an awful lot of research.
Yeah.
I couldn't just write glibly.
Right.
So when I was in the seat, there were some things I was standing for in those articles. I decided to really make 500 words for someone that knows nothing about this issue. That's how I tried to write those
Yeah.
articles for Weirs Times.
Yeah.
So that was pretty much it. I'm really against bureaucracy.
Yeah.
That is just killing taxpayers and business as usual in New Hampshire.
Yeah.
It's not good.
That's I may have made this comment to you before, but that's a part of what I was a Democrat up until around mid-2000s, and I left and became an independent. And one of the things that kind of pushed me away from liberalism was I just have as an entrepreneur, I can't help but have
No kidding.
a pretty intense Syrian hatred for bureaucracy.
You think?
And unfortunately, most liberals seem to, the only time they get annoyed with bureaucracy is when they have to stand in line at the DMV, but otherwise they don't mind it.
More is better.
Yeah.
It's not true. And I saw that sitting in my seat in the State House again
Yeah.
and again and again. You would give logical, thoughtful, vetted information. And I would be called names like, I'm wearing a tinfoil hat, or
Really?
I had one Democrat, really rather disgusting, got up to the floor and told the tale of, I forget the one. Who's the one with the sky? The sky is falling. The sky
Oh,
is
Chicken
falling.
Little?
Chicken Little, yeah.
Yeah.
Said, compared me to Chicken Little.
Really?
Oh, yeah. No, people I've learned so much. First of all, 3.5 years. What an education.
Yeah.
But I've seen the nastiest of I've been spat at. I've been threatened.
Really?
I have been, made fun of. I've been demonized. I've had lawfare. I mean, our Democrats on my own Belknap County delegation sued me personally
Really?
because they disagreed with my accounting of the vote as clerk of my delegation.
No kidding.
Yeah, a total frivolous lawsuit cost the taxpayers about $8,000. And it was thrown out faster than you could blink because it was nothing but their attempt to scare me because they
Right.
were going to bring me to court because I was derelict in my duty as county clerk. Well, no, I was not derelict. I was very careful to make sure that I followed the actual laws
Right.
on the books.
Right.
And, so to me, this whole education, let me tell you, having sat in the seat, I have real life experience of what it's all about, and it's not anything about what folk thinks it's about. Both sides have real corruption issues, and we're heading down the wrong road fast because there's not much of another choice.
So were you surprised? I mean, obviously you knew getting in that there were these kinds of issues, but were you surprised by the nastiness of it?
Yeah.
Were you? Yeah.
I was surprised. By and large, I'm a passionate person.
Yeah.
But I love my God. I am not a hateful person.
Right.
And I would never go out of my way. I would never do anything I feel that would be, scandalous or mean-spirited or unethical.
Yeah.
Because I answer to a much higher level than this. Let me tell you, this is nothing.
Right.
And so, to me, I had kind of assumed that's how I would be received.
Yeah, because I think most people have a perception that, obviously at the federal level it's very nasty and whatnot, but I think people assume, some people probably assume that local politics is much more, friendlier and less intense, but at least around here it's pretty rough.
Oh yeah, I had one commissioner that almost knocked me through the wall, left a meeting really, really angry because we called the commissioners on the floor. And recently, Belknap County sued what the commissioners in that county were doing because they were breaking 2414, RSA 2414. They were basically moving money around in the budget.
Yeah.
For 2 years, we said, stop it. Well, no. Well, now we litigated it, and guess what? The judge came back and said, commissioners and administration of Belknap County, you are wrong. And this is important because now it's a precedent on the books that a New Hampshire court has said that the delegations of the counties in this state have the right to expect that these budgets that they are fixing, that the delegation is voting on, are line items that cannot get changed by those in power, by the others that are in power. Yeah. We made that precedent. That came out about a month ago, Belknap County, because the conservative delegation said, you know what, we're going to take that one on because we believe you're breaking the law, and they were.
Yeah.
So can you imagine now? This has been out there. There's not been a lot in the press about this.
Right.
But delegations that are concerned that your budget will not be upheld by the commissioners or the administrations of your counties, understand you now have a precedent on your side that says you are the people that put the line items in and you have control of that. Right. And that's good for the taxpayer.
Right. Absolutely. So what was your experience running against David Booten? Was that what you thought it was going to be in terms of
no.
Did that get nastier than you ever imagined?
Yeah, very nasty, because I am a platform-loving Republican, and I will go to the edge to support my platform.
Yeah. And
I have plenty of Republicans that have demonized me because I'm not a party girl. And you know what? I will never be a party girl, and they can kiss my butt because we will stand on the record that's before us.
We're almost out of time, but we have a call, so we'll sneak this call in. Hi, welcome to Rock, Paper, Hand Grenades. Who's this? Hello?
Hello?
Hey, you're on the air. What you got? We're almost out of time.
All right, I'll be real quick. Could Jane expand a little bit on what she was talking about with Belknap County? Because let's face it, county doesn't get a lot of attention in this state. And could she just kind of expand on that and put it in layman's terms when she talks about the delegation? Who exactly are those people?
Yes.
And what is up with that?
I tell you what.
I'll have to listen for her call. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
You know what? If you get this week running in the Weir's Times, I believe it comes out tomorrow or Friday. My article will be in that edition coming up. It's free. You can usually get them from Concord all the way north.
I see them all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah. Pick up one of those because my article is specific with what happened in Belknap, and you can contact me if you need more information. Jane, 4, New Hampshire is at gmail.com. Jane, 4, New Hampshire, spelled out, at gmail.com. But I think all of your answers are in that article. I wrote it very carefully, and the facts are explicitly clear in that article, I think, anyway.
Yeah.
So that might help you.
Are you going to run again in the future?
Yeah, I'm going to run again. They're not getting rid of me. Not going to get rid of me. But you know what? Piccolo Opera is something for the next 2 years is going to get the bulk of my energy.
Yeah.
And people can go online, Piccolo Opera, Piccolo Opera New Hampshire NH at .com. PiccoloOpera.com, and it tells you everything coming up. And come and join us at the Opera Ball on Halloween.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
But you're going to continue, I assume, to write for the
Oh,
Writers'
yes.
Times and
We're going to
everything,
continue to be an activist and be present in dialogue. I'm not going away by a long shot.
Yeah.
And I love Hooksett. I love this area. I'm not going anywhere.
Are you still, I'll just ask you quickly, too, are you still involved in the, because the first time I ever met you, you came on and talked about Agenda 21?
Yes.
Are you still involved in?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, that's the tinfoil hat moniker they like for that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it's a true one. And we have upping the ante right now. There's a bill that's coming in with Greg Carson, who's the New Hampshire representative for HUD and is the husband of Senator Sharon Carson. I think it's a bill, SB 315, that's coming up that's going to try to add a third layer of bureaucracy to licensure here in New Hampshire.
Really?
Yeah, and HUD really is looking forward to that. HUD, EPA, guys, they are not our friend. Sorry, but that's just the truth. And the more that we wake up to regional planning commissions and what the end game is for these no voting allowed here, guys. These guys are appointed. You have no say, remember. Every time you don't have a say, you have less rights. And we need more rights. We don't need less rights.
No, I agree. It is fascinating to see these traffic circles pop up where they're clearly not necessary.
Totally not necessary.
So I remember you had brought that up that time you came on to talk about that, and it's it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
How about those fire trucks going around those circles? You know how hard it is for them to negotiate those circles? And what does it do? I mean, this whole thing is backward.
Well, there's one north of where, because I live in Concord, and between Concord and Boscawen on Route 3, I think.
Yes.
Do you know the one I'm
Yes,
talking
I
about?
do.
It's so narrow.
Teeny.
I don't
What
know-
the hell is that?
I don't know, and I guess people have gotten flat tires on that because it's so narrow.
It's nasty.
Yeah.
They're nasty,
Yeah.
right? They don't help any flow of traffic. What the heck is that about? But it's a way to spend money.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
have to make all of these communities, they have to be walkable communities
Right.
because gas is bad for the environment. Don't forget that. Yeah, this is a lot of hooey, and we're not shutting up.
Yeah.
Office or not, we're going to keep talking.
Good. Well, we're about out of time, so why don't you give that website one more time?
Right. Piccolo Opera New Hampshire, NH. PiccoloOperaNH.com has all the performance information. There's tons going on. We have two things coming up before December.
Okay.
And I will be singing there too. Come out and say hello. I'd love to meet with you.
Yeah, very cool. So you'll be back next week, and do you know who?
Next week should be Eileen Landis. I guess
yes.
Senate 20, New Hampshire Senate 20, I believe. District 20.
Eileen dependable. She'll be here.
Yes, she will.
Good. I like her very much. That other guy, I don't know.
Oh, my.
I won't say his name, but
Right.
he's. I think his political career is over now.
Oh, my goodness.
I think he's doomed. I'm just saying. I don't know. It's just a prediction, Anyway, Jane, thank you very much. This has been a great conversation. It's been fun to learn more about you.
Well, thank you very much.
Absolutely, and thank you for all the calls too. It's busy.
Was
week
I? My
this week.
goodness, yeah.
Busy show. So that's going to do it. We'll see you all next week. Thanks, everybody.